Alright, 30 seconds left to add, but I don't care. Hi! Hi, I'm back! Hello everyone, I'm back! Ah! How are you? How have you been doing without me so far? Bro, I am so happy to be moved and out, and now I can do whatever the fuck I want. Bitches, you've been sad. Okay, but what's new? Wait, you've been sad without because of me? Because because you miss me? Dang, this guy's parasocial. Anyway, we're back with Scum Villain. The sound might be a little weird. It is quite echoey for me. So that's just what happens when you move into a new place and you don't have everything set up yet, and you also don't have any soundproofing. So that's we're gonna deal with that for a bit. Hopefully it's not too bad. My filters are, I mean, I checked it earlier and it sounded a bit fine, so it's alright. It's alright for now. I'll check later again and see if I need to make any adjustments. Anyway, we are on chapter 7 still of The Water Present of Scum Villain Self-Saving System, Volume 2. I'm excited because this next couple of pages are really good. They're really fucking good. The question is, can I read from 119 to 166? That's about 50 pages. I want to, because that's where the next chapter after this one ends. So, that would be such a good stopping point. I also forgot to get honey. So I'm just drinking tea with no sweetener in it. Which is fine, it's still good tea, but I have no honeys. I have no honeys. Alright. I don't really want to yap that much. I just want to read because I haven't read in a while, and I really am excited about this next bit because it's really good. Alright, where do we end off? 119 start at okay. Yes. We are at the end of page 119 on the last paragraph. This is exciting. Let's just get into it, shall we? Adjust my mic a little bit. Okay. Okay. We're ready. That child unhurriedly raised his head. His face was pallid, like he was malnourished, but his eyes were both large and bright. They stared straight at Shen Qingqiu as the boy clung to his thigh, unwilling to let go. Shen Qingqiu patted his head. Who's your family? Did you get lost? The small child nodded, and when he spoke, his voice was meek and sweet. I got lost. The child's appearance was naturally endearing, and it even seemed a little familiar. So Shen Qingqiu leaned over to pick him up, letting him sit on his arm. Who did you come here with? The child clung to his neck and pursed his lips. With Shizun. Was he some sect's young disciple? Then, if a grown-up came to look for him, Shen Qingqiu was in for a real headache. But for some reason, the forlorn way the boy said Shizun stirred Shen Qingqiu's pity down to the core. He just couldn't harden his heart and toss the child to the side of the road, leaving him to continue huddling miserably. He patted the boy's soft little behind. Your Shizun doesn't look after you properly. How incredibly awful of him. Where did you get lost? Do you remember? The child giggled into his ear. I remember. Shizun personally threw me down himself, so how could I not? Half of Shen Qingqiu's body went utterly cold. It was as if what he held in his arms wasn't the body of a young child, but a poisonous snake, a massive snake that had wound around his neck and bared its fangs, poised to bite and inject venom into him at any moment. He abruptly threw aside the person in his arms and turned around, his back covered in goosebumps. The fine hairs all over his body promptly stood straight up. The entire street was looking at him. The ones wearing masks, the ones not wearing masks. It was like they were suddenly all immobilized, holding their breaths and watching him. The ones wearing masks were frightening with their sinister and demonic visages, but the ones not wearing masks were even more panic-inducing. They didn't have faces. Shen Jingzhou's instinct in that second was to place his hand on Shu Ya, but he shortly caught himself. He couldn't attack. This was what he once taught Lo Bingke while within Meng Mo's barrier. To attack the people who appeared in the dream realm was to in fact attack your own self. Cold sweat dripped from Chen Jingzhou's forehead. He had wholly, completely failed to realize that he'd entered this barrier. To be fair, people never remembered when and how exactly a dream began. But he'd been fleeing. Surely he hadn't been so dull-witted as to fall asleep on the side of the road while running for his life. From behind him came a tender voice. Shizun. Moments ago, when the voice had been by his ear, it had sounded clearly and utterly adorable and innocent. But when he listened to it now, it actually possessed some unspeakably terrifying quality. Why don't you... Whoa, who is this? Okay, oh shit. Why don't you want me anymore? The child form of Lo Bingke asked faintly from where he stood behind Shen Jingzhou. Shen Jingzhou decisively refused to turn his head and immediately took off. Though he said that all these faceless people were watching him. No, he couldn't call it watching, because they didn't even have eyes, but their faces still turned to Shen Jingzhou's direction, and he could indeed feel the weight of countless gazes upon him. Shen Jingzhou pretended he couldn't see any of this and charged straight ahead, thrusting aside anyone in his way. Suddenly, a hand intercepted his palm. He turned his head to look. Though this hand was slim, it possessed terrifying strength, basically like an iron shackle. A 14-year-old Lo Bingke firmly gripping his wrist. On his face was not only the bruising that had never been allowed to heal, but an overflowing melancholy. Those pitch-black eyes stared right at him, almost within reach. Are you still coming? Shen Jingzhou tried 3 times before he finally flung off Lo Bingke, then pushed aside the crowd and continued to flee. First was a child, second was a youth. If the adult version came next, he really wouldn't be able to take it. But this street seemed to go on forever, with no end in sight. After a sequence of small stalls on either side, faceless playing children and demon-masked girls appeared a second time. Shen Jingzhou was fully certain. This dream realm street was looping. Going forward was fruitless. Crimson lanterns hung high over the shop's doors. The red glow muted and beautiful, yet the wooden doors were tightly shut. Shen Jingzhou pulled open the doors and had just walked inside when they slammed closed by themselves. The interior of the house was dark, and a cold breeze blew through it. Rather than being the inside of a liquor shop, it felt more like he'd entered a cave. Shen Jingzhou didn't think this unexpected. Dream realms couldn't be understood using common sense. Every door had the potential to lead anywhere. At this moment, a series of eerie noises drifted to his ear. They sounded like the intensely labored, incessant panting of a person close to death, whose lungs had been punctured, who was in terrible agony. Moreover, it didn't sound like only one person. Shen Jingzhou snapped his fingers, flicking a flame forth from his fingertips, and aimed it toward the origin of those strange noises. The flame illuminated the scene in its entirety, leaving out not a single detail. His pupils instantly shrank to pinpoints. Lu Qingge held Cheng Luan, the blade aimed at himself, and was stabbing it into his own chest. His body was stained with blood, large swaths covered with a deep and ghastly red. The wounds weren't just concentrated in one place, and a stream of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. It looked like he'd already stabbed himself with the sword, who knew how many times, yet his expression was furious and crazed. It was obvious he was delirious, in the midst of a chi deviation. No, Lu Qingge, don't kill yourself. Oh. Hi, Shilin. My brother's out of state and pretty dead from traveling, but glad I could catch some fun Scum reading. Yay! I hope you get some good rest. Beneath the rays of dim yellow firelight, this picture was exceptionally horrifying. Shen Jingzhou momentarily forgot that this was still the dream realm and threw himself forward, wrenching Chongluan away. That sword had been staked in the center of Lu Qingge's heart, and with only a light touch from Shen Jingzhou, fresh blood splurted violently forth, filling his vision with red. At that, Shen Jingzhou's mind cleared a little, and he backed up 2 steps, only to bump into another person. He jerked his head around. Yue Qingyuan's head was lowered, gaze meeting his. Though their gazes met, those 2 eyes were empty and devoid of light. From his throat to his chest, his forelimbs and abdomen were all pierced with a forest of pitch-black arrows. Pierced with 10,000 arrows? All at once, Shen Jingzhou understood the meaning of these visions. These were their original deaths. The deaths that had been meant to cause with his own The deaths that he had been meant to cause with his own hands. Shen Jingzhou couldn't stand it anymore. He far preferred being outside, getting aggressively stared down by a circle of faceless people, to this sort of thing. He backed up in the direction from which he'd come, and he managed to brush those wooden doors, feeling as if he'd been granted amnesty? Shen Jingzhou kicked the doors open and rushed outside. His mind was a mess, his footsteps confused as he tripped and staggered along, cutting a rather sorry figure. Every person on the street watched him in a deathly silence, and while he was disoriented, he crashed headlong into someone's chest. That person's hand swiftly came around to his back, gathering him into their arms. The other party was a little taller than him, slender and willowy, dressed in clothes as black as ink that exposed only a fair neck. Above that, a sinister mask covered their face. Shen Jingzhou hadn't spoken when a smiling voice came from above. Shizun, be careful. He had no need to lift the mask to know whose face lay underneath. At once, Shen Jingzhou began to struggle. The other party didn't hold him by force, so getting free wasn't difficult. Only after retreating several steps and maintaining a safe distance did he right himself. You created the city? Shen Jingzhou asked. Luo Bingke casually removed the mask. His expression looked like he was sad that they couldn't keep playing hide-and-seek. Correct. What does Shizun think? Shen Jingzhou slowly nodded. You truly deserve to be called Meng Mo's succeeding disciple. To be able to create an illusion this detailed, he feared it was nearly as good as the city Meng Mo had created to trap them in all those years ago. Furthermore, it had so accurately grasped his lurking fears. Originally, Luo Bingke's mood had seemed rather good, but on hearing these words, the smile on his face, the smile on his lips faded. I'm not Meng Mo's disciple. Didn't you accept him as your master? Shen Jingzhou asked, slightly curious. Luo Bingke held his silence for a while before he answered in a peeved tone. I didn't. All right then, if he didn't, he didn't. Shen Jingzhou didn't think there was any point in wasting time on this. Shizun, if you're willing to return of your own volition, you can ask for anything, Luo Bingke said. Are you offering a plea bargain? Asked Shen Jingzhou. So long as I don't dissolve the blood mites from within your body, it would be futile to flee. Oh, is that so? He smiled. Then right now, why haven't you personally come to catch me? Luo Bingke stiffened, sparks flashing in his eyes. At this reaction, Shen Jingzhou became even more sure. Something has gone wrong with that sword of yours, right? He asked languidly. The heavens smiled down on me. After falling into the endless abyss while within the stomach of the huge ancient beast, Luo Bingke had found a mythical sword that had been forged by a master demon blacksmith with an entire lifetime's worth of painstaking labor. Shouldn't please, he's not my type. Teacher monogamous. him. That's Binka. The sword was called Shinmo, Heart Demon. The name alone tells you that it's something super dangerous, right? And that was a must. The stronger the spiritual artifact, the harder it was to control. Since ancient times, Shinmo had passed through the hands of more than 100 masters, and all had been blessed geniuses from various races. Yet despite this, none of them had been able to escape the same fate, and they had all died to this very blade, their own sword. Shinmo lashed back against its wielder. If you could make it submit, it was a formidable weapon in your hand. But if one day you were unable to control the sword's evil tendencies, you would become no more than another blood sacrifice to its hunger. Only after starting the Demon Realm arc had the original Lobinka gone through his first bout of internal struggles, wherein he narrowly escaped Shinmo's recoil. After that, for the sake of solving this problem, he'd begun a side plot that lasted 500 chapters and involved collecting 8 or 9 more girls. But right now, with the plot in disarray, it seemed the recoil incident had also moved earlier. Shinmo's recoil was no joke. No wonder Lobinka hadn't given chase. He was busy secluding himself to recover, so he was unable to come capture Shen Qingzhou in person. Suddenly, Lobinka grabbed Shen Qingzhou's shoulder and forcefully yanked. Rip! Why again? Lobinka's face was almost as dark as the bottom of the pot. Each word he spat out sounded like he'd first ground it between his teeth. Even if I can't come in person for now, Shizun shouldn't be too happy. That doesn't mean you should tear my clothes. Shen Qingzhou clutched the remaining fabric tightly and indignantly said, What are you doing? Is this your only method of humiliating others? It was clearly Shizun who humiliated me first. Satisfaction points, plus 50. You can add points for that too? Gross! Why does this feel so sick? When Lobinka's hand exerted force, the white robe's fabric disintegrated into pieces, drifting away in the wind. His anger still unappeased, he pressed towards Shen Qingzhou. His expression made Shen Qingzhou fear that there would be no end to this. He'd never known Lobinka to have crazy, clothes-ripping tendencies, but of course he couldn't just sit there and resign himself to it. They exchanged 10 or so blows, quick and nimble. Lobinka could obviously easily assume the upper hand, but like a cat playing with a mouse, he patiently engaged Shen Qingzhou in close combat. Shen Qingzhou's movements were swift, but it seemed that in Lobinka's eyes, he was always one step behind. When he lashed out with a palm strike, Lobinka evaded within a hair's breadth every time, calm and unhurried. Then, as if reciprocating a polite gesture, he perfunctorily returned the blow. On top of that, the system was being extremely annoying, with satisfaction point notifications ringing without end, plus 20, plus 30, plus 50, etc. The infernal racket flooded Shen Qingzhou's brain. After several back and forths, it was Shen Qingzhou's turn to wear a dark face. Where are you aiming? Are you messing with me? Shouldn't the goal of a fight be defeating the other party? This wasn't a fight. This couldn't even be considered sparring. It was basically harassment. As he thought this, Shen Qingzhou's concentration slipped and he used too much force, falling into Lobinka. Oh, how the turntables. This, Lobinka didn't evade at all, and he let Shen Qingzhou crash into his arms with a thud. His voice carried laughter, like his mood had risen once more. Shizun taught me this maneuver himself. When it comes to force, there's a time for restraint and a time for release. One must, above all else, avoid losing one's balance. How could you forget that yourself? At this moment, Shen Qingzhou's mind was bombarded with a colorful explosion of little beast ad nauseum. Ad nauseum? Someone explain this Greek to me. Motherfucker! This maneuver really was something he taught Lobinka. He still remembered that lesson. Not long after Lobinga had moved out of the woodshed, though he was blessed with shitloads of raw talent and had come up with a fighting style through random experimentation, other than the handful of cutting and stabbing maneuvers every new disciple knew, he had known absolutely jack shit about any higher level techniques. After watching him practice a series of sword, palm, and foot techniques, Shen Jingzhou had held his forehead for a long time while Lo Binghe awaited his evaluation by his side, as anxious as he was nervous. Ad nauseum is Latin for to the point of being nauseous. Oh, okay. That makes sense. Thank you. Shen Jingzhou had been unable to bear hurting him, and, after a long while, he finally squeezed out a single line. Pragmatic and quite flexible. In the name of correcting Lo Binghe's more tragic habits, Shen Jingzhou had put in a great deal of painstaking effort and given him daily private instructions. He had been unable to understand why a nudge wasn't enough. Given Lo Binghe's intelligence and comprehension, Shen Jingzhou shouldn't have needed to tell him anything more than once. But in reality, Lo Binghe was incredibly stubborn. He would immediately forget his lessons, no matter how tirelessly taught, and also use too much force. He had slammed into Shen Jingzhou's arms, who knew how many times, until Shen Jingzhou... Did I say Shen Jingzhou? Ew. Until Shen Jingzhou finally became angry. Are you doing this on purpose? Unable to help himself, he had slapped the back of Lo Binghe's head, neither heavy nor light, and shouted, How is this anticipating and defending against your enemy? You're basically throwing yourself into their arms. Only after this did Lo Binghe, face fully flushed, finally start practicing in earnest. Oh my god, Binghe! He's such a fucking loser! Oh god. This stupid little bitch. He no longer dared to make mistakes so carelessly. But in the present, Lo Binghe was the one lecturing Shen Jingzhou on his incorrect stance. What nonsense is this? Shen Jingzhou felt like his dignity as a master had been challenged. He was about to counterattack when Lo Binghe's hand trailed downward, following the line of his spine. Goosebumps exploded down Shen Jingzhou's back in its wake. Lo Binghe, he said through clenched teeth. Satisfaction points, plus 100. Congratulations. Congratulations, my ass! Lo Binghe once again plucked away a length of shredded white cloth. Seeing Shizun in this robe makes me awfully unhappy. It would be better to rip it all off. Doesn't that mean he won't stop until I'm 100% naked? Even if you hate me, there's no need to take it out on this robe, Shen Jingzhou said. Moreover, it's Gong Yizhao's. Bad move. Bad move, Shizun. Wrong thing to say, my guy. Lo Binghe's face fell. Shizun's the one who truly hates me. You're unwilling to associate with even a scrap of my clothing. Why? Why were two grown men neurotically discussing a piece of clothing while surrounded by staring eyes? Lo Binghe, are you actually the sensitive type? I even patted your robe clean and folded it for you. What more do you want? It can't be that you wanted me to hand wash and return it to you personally, Shen Jingzhou thought, his expression shifting erratically. What is Shizun thinking? Lo Binghe asked at the sight. He added coolly. If it's about Gong Yizhao, let me advise Shizun, you needn't think about him anymore. He's a little jealous. He's just a little bit jealous, is all. Plot-wise, Gong Yizhao being banished, forced to defend a desolate regional border and deprived of any future prospects, was only supposed to happen after Lo Binghe and the little palace mistress slept together. But now the plot was jumbled to the point where even airplane shooting towards the sky, the story's own father, would no longer recognize it. So naturally, any scenario could have moved up. Shen Jingzhou had yet to hear Luo Binghe's answer when the faceless people nearby stirred. Originally, they had only vacantly stood there, watching blankly as if they were mentally infirm or doing their own thing. Now they started to steadily gather around him. Shen Jingzhou was squeezed into the center of the crowd, but he couldn't directly blast them away. He looked again toward Luo Binghe, whose brows were tightly furrowed, hand pressed to his temple, too preoccupied to notice anything else, as if he were enduring a mental assault. Shen Jingzhou had a sudden empathy. In all likelihood, Qin Mo had taken the chance to lash out and was trying to strike at Luo Binghe's mind. As Luo Binghe could no longer spare the energy to maintain the barrier, the dream realm was beginning to fall into chaos. Binghe, Shizun knows other men? He must hate me. He is literally, oh my god. You know other men. God. It's sickening. He's sick. If Shen Qingzhou didn't leave now, then when would he get the chance? If Luo Binghe couldn't expend any attention to stop him, so as long as Shen Qingzhou faced another illusion and overcame the related fears buried within his heart, he would be able to destroy this failing barrier. Just like that, Shen Qingzhou left. Luo Binghe's head hurt like it was splitting open, but he was unable to move. He could only yell, "I dare you to take another step!" Shen Qingzhou took 10 steps. Afterward, he turned his head. How's that? God, I love him. Luo Binghe looked like he was about to cough up blood. He ground out each word one by one. You just wait and see. Shen Qingzhou's gaze didn't falter. He spoke coldly and loftily. Goodbye. You think that just because you told me to... What? You think that I'll wait just because you told me to? I'm not an idiot. To the side, Shen Qingzhou glimpsed another shop. He kicked open the doors and leapt through them. Whatever appeared this time, he was absolutely certain he could face it calmly. At the very least, his chance of success was higher than when facing Luo Binghe. The doors closed behind him, and it was like the clamor outside had been severed away by a sharp knife. Within a split second, it was all deathly silent. Shen Qingzhou held his breath and waited, soundless. After a long while, it was as if someone had lit a candle and his surroundings slowly, flickeringly lightened. Shen Qingzhou looked down, and he came face to face with a countenance that was both foreign and familiar. Before him knelt a fragile-looking youth. And this is where I bring up the illustration. And this is where I bring this up. Oh. There he is. There's the boy. There he is. Oh, there he is. Oh god. Oh god. The boy wore coarse clothes and was crouched, bent over on the ground. It was a crestfallen pose, and his hands were tightly tied with a thick, rough rope. Though his face was deathly pale, his eyes were full of life. Shen Qingzhou met his gaze, unwavering. This, categorically, wasn't Shen Qingzhou's memory, but this face was indeed exactly like his. The only thing it was missing was the polish of time and cultivation. Instead, it possessed the inexperience of youth. This was Shen Qingzhou, yet it wasn't Shen Qingzhou. If he had to be obvious about it, this was Shen Zhu. Shen Qingzhou abruptly sat up on a wooden slab. After startling awake, he woke up. That was it. He just got a glimpse of little baby Shen Zhu, the pharaoh, his baby. He just got a glimpse of it, and then he was like, nope, I'm out. Oh my god. I'll cry. Oh, I'll cry. Oh, I will cry. I'll cry when we get to it. If you know, you know. Alright, let's take that down again. Goodbye, Shen Zhu. Right. Shen Qingqiu abruptly sat up on a wooden slab. After startling awake, he took in his surroundings, and only then did he realize that he was lying within an abandoned residence. The sky was already bright, white light streaming through the worn-out window and cracks in the rice paper. Then he remembered. The night before, he had wandered at random through the festival, and not long into his wander had really found an old uninhabited house. He had originally only intended to rest a little, but by accident he had carelessly fallen asleep, allowing Luo Bingke to catch him within the dream realm. As Shen Qingzhou considered the illusion he had seen just before the dream realm collapsed, he couldn't help but sink into thought. Why is realm such a hard word for me to say? Realm. I think it'd be hard for anyone to say, honestly. That word is difficult. Realm. Anyway. Where was I? Sinking to thought. Though his and the original flavor's souls counted as two different people, in the end, he was using someone else's body, so it made sense that there would be at least some influence from the prior owner. What he'd seen in the dream had likely been the original Shenju's childhood memories. In a way, then, he had cheated his way out, because those memories had absolutely no hold on the current Shen Qingqiu, thus he had been able to easily and effortlessly break free of them. Although, in retrospect, Shen Qingqiu thought this fairly suspicious. The Shenju within his dreams had been tied up, so he'd assumed it was a memory from the time when Shenju was still held by human traffickers. However, he'd been in a room decorated with a soft carpet, numerous cabinets for keeping valuables, and the walls hung with calligraphy, which had lent it a noble air. It hadn't looked like a criminal's den, but rather had unquestionably been a rich man's study. In other words, it looked like Shenju had not been as doted upon in the Chu estate as Chu Haitang claimed. Shen Qingqiu hopped up from the bare wooden couch and unconsciously felt up his form. At least his clothes were still there, but even though his clothes were still intact, he didn't really want to wear them anymore. Though they were on his body, he had an ominous feeling that they could be ripped off at any moment. And that's a scene break. We're on page 135. We only have a couple... Well, actually, we have quite a bit more to this chapter. Anyway. Can I read that much in one setting? We'll see, I guess. Without any honey? We'll see, I guess. Alright, continuing. Before he'd gone too far through the streets, Shen Qingqiu discovered that more than a few people had poured into Huayue City upon receiving notice of the warrant for his capture. Though many of the cultivators put on an act and didn't wear their sect colors while disguised as common people, when they sat down at roadside stands, their postures were entirely different from an ordinary person's. Shen Qingqiu felt it was too dangerous to go as he was, so he found a corner, smeared his face with dirt, and haphazardly stuck on some whiskers. After making all these preparations, he carefully returned to the street. Disguise time, baby. Sleep time. Okay, have good sleep. Thanks for stopping by. When he glanced up at the sky, he saw that the clouds were thin, like they were slowly retreating. If nothing went awry, noon today would be the optimal time. When he looked down again, a slender snow-white silhouette flashed through the crowd in front of him, fast and light, their profile outstandingly handsome. Outstandingly handsome! This guy he's so gay. He's the gayest straight person. Actually, that's not. Anyway. Lu Qingge, his hired thug, was here. Shen Qing's eyes brightened, but just as he was about to chase after Lu Qingge, a delicate shout erupted from a nearby tavern. "What are you saying with your filthy mouth?" The voice was clear, delicate, and extremely familiar. Shen Qingqiu unconsciously paused mid-step, the scene drawing his gaze. Right afterward, a sequence of crashes shook the air, and all the passerbys cast glances as well. At this time, another young woman humphed and said spitefully, "What? You have the guts for crime, but won't let others talk. No wonder Sangchong Mountain produced a degenerate like Shen Jingzhou. Everyone in the sect must be eager to bury their shame, especially Qingjing Peak. Unfortunately for you, everyone knows what kind of thing he is. You think you can hide it? What a venomous tone. The young woman who'd spoken first jumped in to refute her right away. Shizun absolutely isn't the kind of person who'd do something like this. Don't you dare slander him. What young girl would even now speak up for him like this, like so? Who could it have been other than Ning Ying? We love her in this house. Ming Fan's voice carried into the street as well. We were only polite to you out of respect for the old palace master. You ought to be more polite as well. You're streaming awesome. Hi, Mothman. Welcome in. Though Shen Jingzhou had wanted to go look for Lu Qingge, having urgent matters to tend to, this strange atmosphere made him hesitate for a second. In the end, afraid the Qingjing Peak disciples would be at a disadvantage, he stayed for a moment and ducked to the side of the building to hide and watch. There were two distinct camps in this tavern. One side was led by Ming Fan and Ning Ying. I can never say her name, I can't enunciate her name. It's just so, it's hard to say. While a crowd of Qingjing Peak disciples stood behind them, their every face filled with displeasure. The little palace mistress stood in front of the other side, her hands on her hips as she faced her opponents with a cold scowl. The Huanhua Palace disciples behind her had already flashed their blades, their glares even more full of fury. Two young women, one lovely and delicate, the other with gorgeous features gracefully faced off. Even if the air was filled with crackling, sizzling sparks, the scene was still incomparably easy on the eyes. Bro. Lo Bingke was setting fires in his backyard again. No, even Qingjing Peak's disciples were involved, and they had challenged Huanhua Palace. This was the real enemies meeting on a narrow road. He's always blaming Lo Bingke, but it's always his fault. This is on you, Shen Jingzhou. It's because of you. Stupid. Enemies meeting on a narrow road has a footnote. An idiom for when you unexpectedly meet your enemies or nemesis. Approximately equivalent to the English, it's a small world, but only for people you hate or who hate you. Lo Bingke was setting... No, I just read that. Shen Jingzhou could guarantee that if he left the scene and walked away right this instant, Qingjing Peak would definitely suffer more casualties, and greatly. Remember, this little palace mistress was domineering to the point that other than Lo Bingke, there was no one in the world she wouldn't dare hit. Injury and crippling strikes were common dishes on her menu of retaliation. The little palace mistress humphed. Not that kind of person. Then tell me, why would he flee in fear of punishment? And he did that sort of thing. As she spoke, she clenched her teeth in hatred, the rims of her eyes going red. Shizun was never convicted. What do you mean flee in fear of punishment? Ning Ying shot back. And there's still no final consensus on who committed those deeds. Our Sangchong Mountain never blamed your Huanhua Palace for being gullible and overly suspicious, or for insinuating on imprisoning our Qingjing Peak's Peak Lord in your water prison without regard for the truth. If not for you, things wouldn't have blown up into this situation today. The reason for this beep fight wasn't the male lead, but Shen Jingzhou. Idiot. Shen Jingzhou wiped his brow. By what merit does this humble Shen deserve this? At the same time, the dark cloud over his heart that he'd been unable to wipe away grew even darker. This argument just made it more evident that after he left, something had happened at Huanhua Palace, and these new grudges and old debts had all fallen on his head. The little palace mistress flew into a rage, though to tell the truth, Shen Qingzhou felt that she was always in a state of rage. So you're saying that our Huanhua Palace only has ourselves to blame? She snapped. Sancheng Mountain is so impressive, so high up and domineering, so arrogant and unbridled, that not only do you refuse to apologize, you have the gall to be so brazen towards the victims. With this kind of behavior, you still think you have the face to call yourselves the #1 major sect? Preposterous! Ning Ying curled her lip. Sancheng Mountain has already been acknowledged by the masses that the #1 major sect as the #1 major sect. Whether you accept the fact doesn't matter. Moreover, who came at us first and acted brazen? Our Qingjing Peak was eating a perfectly peaceful meal in this tavern. What's your justification for coming up and cussing us out? First saying that you want our whole Qingjing Peak to kneel to you, kowtow, and apologize for our offenses, then say that our entire Sancheng Mountain should be buried together. Exactly who was being preposterous? Huayue City is not your Huanhua Palace's backyard. Are you saying that the entire world is your house? Ning Yingying's voice was delicate and crisp, and Shen Qingzhou was flabbergasted to hear it. How had the innocent, naive, and silly Yingying become so good at catfights? And why was the little palace mistress acting like a beast not properly leashed in her cage, biting at everyone she laid eyes on? Our Qingjing Peak has always cleaved to etiquette, Ning Yingying continued. Shizun was the proper teacher and said not to bicker with foul-mouthed little children. This is the only reason we've tolerated you thus far. Are you finished? If you are, then leave. Don't get in the way of our meal. I can't eat while looking at your face. After she spoke, she picked up a cup of tea from the table and splashed it at the other girl's feet. The little palace mistress didn't dodge fast enough, and a few drops of tea splashed on the hem of her dress. You! She screeched. You shrew! Mingfan couldn't take it anymore. Throwing aside his chopsticks, he sneered. Don't think we're afraid of you just because you're the old palace master's daughter. After all, you're just a little girl relying on her daddy. Neither of your seniority nor your cultivation are worth anything. Though, when it comes to your ability to annoy, you're first-rate. Shrew. The way I see it, you're the biggest shrew than anyone else here. You've lost every last shred of Huanhua Palace's face. Shen Qingzhou was shocked. Qingjing Peak's disciples had always been so meek in front of him, they wouldn't even dare fart. If he told them to feed the chickens, they dare not walk the dogs too. If he told them to make rice, they dare not make congee. Yet, it turned out they were actually quite the smack-talkers when let loose. The little palace mistress's face went white with anger. She'd heard Qin Wanyue say that this soft, bewitching little girl had been sex siblings with Luo Binghe for many years, as well as childhood friends and innocent playmates. All at once, envy and hatred flowed forth from within her, and she suddenly raised her hand, a black shadow shooting out from her sleeve like a poisonous snake. Fuck, she has a new whip! When the other customers in the tavern saw that it was finally coming to blows, they left at top speed. Although they passed Shen Qingzhou, their expressions were unperturbed, like this was nothing strange. It seemed that the residents of Huanhua City had long since grown accustomed to this sort of scene. The waiter even adeptly stuck a bill on the post before he walked out. The little palace mistress was the old palace master's beloved daughter. Her martial skills were the product of his hand-on-hand teachings, and her weapons were far from ordinary in quality, the whip's strikes swift and fierce. Meanwhile, Ning Yingying was the beloved youngest Jimei who was pampered by the entirety of Qingjing Peak. She very rarely encountered danger and had virtually no real battle experience. Her sword waved back and forth, and though she warded off the attacks, a keen eye could see she was having trouble. For his part, Mingfan wanted to aid her, but he couldn't get past the circle of the iron whip's dance and could only fret helplessly. Shen Qingzhou assessed the situation, then casually plucked a green leaf from the flower pot by his foot, which he sent flying. The fragile green leaf was filled with spiritual energy. When it collided with the iron whip, there was a piercing crash of something hard on metal. The little palace mistress was unable to see what had gone wrong, but she felt the space between her finger and thumb go numb before her whip slipped from her hand and flew away. Ning Ying Ying also started. She'd been about to meet another attack with her sword, but once she saw that the little palace mistress had no weapon with which to block, she hurriedly pulled back, afraid of really stabbing her. But the little palace mistress had no similar mercy, and her reaction was supremely fast. The second her weapon left her hand, she reversed the momentum of her arm to turn it into a slap. A smack. Ning Ying Ying held her face, her head turned to the side. Fuck. The 5 fingerprints standing out on Ning Ying Ying's face, and the cheek already swollen on one side went to show that the attack had been utterly ruthless. Shen Jingzhe's heart ached in terrible distress. You dare hit a disciple, who even I've never touched. However, at the sight of Ning Ying Ying's pretty face made lopsided, one side swollen, one side smooth, and all over tremendously unsightly, the little palace mistress was enormously satisfied and felt she had vetted her resentment. She rubbed her wrist, raised her chin, and laughed. If your Shizun won't teach you, then let this palace mistress do it. Lesson 1. One must consider propriety when speaking. Who the fuck are you trying to teach my disciples in my place? Ming Fan drew his sword. You bitch! You've gone too far! Let's go all out. The Qingjing Peak disciples couldn't take it any longer. Their youngest Shimei had been hit. How could they just let that go? They yelled and drew their swords, their blades gleaming with dazzling light. Shen Jingzhou was trying to figure out how to teach the little palace mistress a lesson without inciting greater bloodshed or exposing his location as quickly as possible, when he suddenly noticed that within the crowd of Huanhua Palace disciples, one person was behaving most strangely and suspiciously. Shen Jingzhou observed that person for a few seconds, after which his heart thumped. Not good, he thought silently. It would no longer be so easy to slip away. And that's the end of the chapter. And you can probably guess what the next chapter is called. Probably. The next chapter is called Death. Chapter 8. Uh-huh. Oh my god. I'm going to... I don't know. Will I be able to fit? I have to read this in one go. It's 142 to 160. It's about 20 pages. I can do it, right? We can do it. Ugh, sorry. I can do it. Before that though, we will have a short little ad break. I'm gonna get up and walk around, maybe get some more tea. But yeah, I'll be back in 3 minutes. All right, BRB. Alright, we're back real short, as I said. As I said, we're back. We're back, baby. Let's read some more! Oh god, this is like one of my favorite chapters ever. I love this. I say that about every single chapter, but I really love this chapter so much. Oh my god, I really do. You can imagine why. You can imagine why. It's titled Death. Anything could happen, you know? Including death. So, yeah, page 143. Death. Chapter 8. Ugh, that's just hot water now. Again, I have no honey in my tea. This is sad. At first glance, this disciple looked rather ordinary. They were mixed in with the crowd of Huanhua Palace disciples, hunched over and huddling close, gaze flickering around. Shen Qingzhou only noticed him because his face was one color, his neck another, and his hands yet two more different hues. Furthermore, within this agitated mob, where everyone's blood was running hot, he didn't draw his sword or cry out for a fight, nor did he glare at the offending party with furious eyes. Instead, he brushed back and forth through the Huanhua Palace disciples with his head down, looking just like a pickpocket taking advantage of this ruckus. As far as Shen Qingzhou knew, only one type of person acted like this. While Ming Fan was mid-clash, sword ringing and clanging, he looked back and cried, "Xiao Shimei! Shimei, how are you?" Ning Ying had halted for a while, like the slap had stunned her silly. Now she finally came back to her senses. Her face was half red, half white, expression furious and eyes teary, but she brandished her sword to fight back. She had suffered this humiliation because she'd been momentarily soft-hearted. This time, she would show no mercy whatsoever. The shop's interior descended into a massive brawl. To the side, Shen Qingzhou saw that an old cat lazily curled its tail, licking its fur in the sunlight. He scooped it up with a single hand and tossed it into the tavern. He just threw the cat into the tavern. Okay. Surprised, the old cat screeched and darted back and forth between the two fighting camps. Shen Qingzhou lowered his head and followed it, slipping into the circle of battle. Once this strange person had mysteriously pushed into the fray, both sides paused. Afraid to harm an innocent, Ning Ying hesitated slightly, but the little palace mistress didn't have such reservations. Picking her whip back up, she lashed out as before. Shen Qingzhou what the fuck? Shen Qingzhou chased that old black cat. What? No, that's not what it said. I can't read anymore. I was doing fine, and then I suddenly can't read anymore. Shen Qingzhou chased the old cat back and forth through the hall, calling the name he'd given it on the spot. In the midst of this chaos, Ning Ying's hands were obviously tied, especially as she was afraid to make a careless move. Yet she kept feeling as if someone was lifting her elbow, then like someone was pushing her shoulder. It was as if, even when she didn't move her sword, it still danced, throwing off silvery light. Suddenly, two smacks rang out, and the little palace mistress held her face, dumbstruck and petrified like a wooden chicken, frozen on the spot. These two slaps had been much louder and sharper than the one she had delivered to Ning Ying's face. Everyone in both camps had seen Ning Ying's arms fly, slapping first with one hand, then the other, giving the little palace mistress two smacks in the face. In tacit agreement, they all stopped where they were. Ming Fan cheered, "Xiao Shimei, nice hit!" "No, that wasn't me," Ning Ying said weakly. "Don't be scared, it's already done," Ming Fan said encouragingly. "Everyone knows she started it. You were considerate enough not to hurt her, and she responded with a sneak attack. Serves her right." The crowd of Qingjing Peak disciples agreed, one after another. The little palace mistress's tears glistened. You dare to hit me? Not even my daddy's ever hit me." Girl, grow the fuck up. This tea tastes pretty gross now, since it's just hot water. Ugh. No, it really wasn't me. It was you, Mingfan cut off. Remember, whenever Qingjing Peak's disciples are bullied, we must return in twofold. If we don't hit back, we'll betray all of Shizun's lessons. Chen Jingzhou internally cheered together with the disciples. Good boy, Mingfan. What the fuck? Good boy, Mingfan had earnestly taken his teachings to heart. Yes. Grudges must be repaid in just this way. Stealthily, Shen Jingzhou slipped into the group of Huanhua disciples and finally caught that old cat, which was still howling and screeching. Regardless of how stupid a person might be, they could still see that something was off with him. While cupping her two red, terribly cumbersome-looking swollen cheeks, the little palace mistress glared at him, filled with resentment. Hey, who exactly are you? Who would dare mess with me like this? The Huanhua palace disciples surrounded him, yelling, The palace mistress is asking you a question. Shen Jingzhou bent over and released the cat. Then he straightened and pointed to the disciple who stood haunched and lurking in the back. Instead, why don't you ask who exactly is he? All at once, every one of those gazes focused on that person. The little palace mistress was still in a rage, so at first she only gave the indicated disciple a sideways glance, but the more she looked, the stranger she found him. Leaving Shen Jingzhou alone for now, she turned to the odd disciple and said suspiciously, Who are you? What are you doing dressed like that? Are you really from our Huanhua palace? Why have I never seen you before? The disciple mumbled, but couldn't manage a reply. The little palace mistress turned to her subordinates. What about you? Do you recognize him? Realizing things weren't looking good, the disciple made an eerie sound which made everyone turn their blades on him. Don't get close, Shen Jingzhou warned with a raised voice. At the same time, he plucked another leaf, then flicked his wrist and sent it forth. This time, both Ning Yingying and Mingfan saw the way that leaf flew, and they balked. Enveloped in the sword glare's glow, the leaf pierced through the air and sliced open the strange disciple's outer robes, cleaving through his clothes to reveal the skin underneath. At this, it was like everyone had seen a ghost, and they backed up several steps. Some went even further, shrieking as they leapt straight out of the tavern. Scarlet-colored skin. It was in perfect accord with Shen Jingzhou's guess. To his knowledge, only one type of entity held themselves with that posture, a sower disguised as a normal person. Only the usually exposed parts of the sower's skin had been painted to resemble the hue of an ordinary person's, and so the sower's cover was blown on the spot. As such, it decided it had nothing to lose and rushed forth with a yell, eyes bloodshot. These disciples were young juniors, so most of them hadn't gone on the recent excursion to Jinlan City. Therefore, they had only heard of the monster and never seen it. Now that a real one had appeared before them, and one that was madly grabbing at whoever it saw at that, they were all scared shitless. I said shitless, but it says senseless, but same thing, whatever. When the sower threw itself toward the Qingjing Peak's disciple, Shen Jingzhou flashed between them and planted a foot on the sower's chest, sending it flying through 2 tables and spewing fresh blood everywhere. He turned his head to yell at the group, Hurry and leave! Instead, Ning Yingying latched onto him, crying and laughing. Shizun! Is it you, Shizun? No way! My face is covered in dirt and whiskers. You can still recognize me. Shen Jingzhou was very slightly moved. However, in this kind of situation, choosing not to leave, and on top of that, staying behind to be a burden, and moreover, calling out his true identity despite his disguise, as expected, she was still dumb. When the sower tenaciously threw itself toward them again, refusing to relent, Shen Jingzhou pushed Ning Yingying away with a hand as gentle as spring, Then, with the other hand as harsh as winter, he flicked a fire technique at the enemy. It didn't hit. No, the fire didn't even come out. The fountain of blood that had remained dormant and hidden in Chen Qingzhou's throat for many years once more began to stir. He'd had enough of this without a cure, the poison that just loved dropping the ball at key moments. He snapped his fingers continuously over and over, but not a single flame sprang forth. Like a lighter out of lighter fluid, he click-clacked away, but there was no sparks. But there were no sparks no matter how he snapped. While Shen Qingzhou became flustered, the sword lunged and latched onto his thigh. Shen Qingzhou was struck speechless. He unthinkingly raised his misfortune-plagued right hand. Naturally, he could already detect 3 red patches happily taking root and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Not fair! Why am I infected so fast every time? Perhaps his rage and sorrow alchemized into a fuse, because with his last snap, an explosive burst of flames finally ignited between his fingers. With a kick, Shen Qingzhou sent the sword clinging to his thigh flying, and he struck downward with a palm alight with raging flames. The sword was engulfed in a blaze of fire and a series of horrible shrieks. Ning Yingying and Ming Fan tearfully sandwiched Shen Qingzhou on his left and right. Shizun! The other Qingjing Peak disciples were about to join in, but they quickly retreated under their Shizun's go outside and run 500 laps glare. Since his disguise was already awash, Shen Qingzhou scrubbed and wiped at his face until he recovered his original appearance. Was anyone infected? He asked. Then, with a heartfelt tone, he finally said a line he'd always dreamed of saying. Hurry and take some medicine. You must not stop taking your medication. Footnote. You must not stop taking your medication originated as a slogan to encourage people with depression to not stop taking their medication. The phrase was later co-opted as internet slang as a way to say there's something wrong with you. Shut up. It's fucking stupid. Oh my god. One male and one female voice, one high and one low, sobbed into his ears. Shizun, we finally found you. Shizun, this disciple missed you so much it hurt. I don't know which one's saying which, but it doesn't really matter. Shen Qingzhou hadn't even replied when a cold feeling lanced down his back. He pushed aside his 2 disciples and sent Shuya flying out from the folds of his robes. With a clang, his blade blocked the little palace mistress's refined iron whip. If the little palace mistress could have been considered only temporarily enraged during the recent altercation with Qingjing Peak, then this time her actions truly brimmed with killing intent. She hacked away with the short whip in her hand like it was a knife or an axe, every move vicious and desperate. Are you mad? Shen Qingzhou asked bluntly. Where does all this rage come from every day? He'd long wanted to ask that question. You wicked villain! The little palace mistress shouted. Return the lives of my Shishong and Shiji! At first, Shen Qingzhou thought that she was once again grieving the Huanhua disciples who died during the Immortal Alliance conference. He would never have guessed that the little palace mistress screamed next. I don't want to say it. Guys, I know it's written down in the book, but it's not canon. It's not canon in my heart. I don't want to say it. Just because Ma Shishong said some harsh things to you while you were being imprisoned, he died so horribly, so horribly. Who's Ma Shishong? Could it be that nasty, sarcastic, pockmarked guy? This Shen didn't take a single life when leaving Huanhua Palace, he said. So why are you telling me that he died horribly? He then turned to his disciple to whisper, He really died? How horrible was it? He really did die, Ming Fan answered, also quiet. It was utterly, utterly horrible. His entire body was green and decayed. They say it was some highly toxic demonic poison. Highly toxic demonic poison? That very much sounded like Lord Binka's handiwork. Quibbling is useless, the little palace mistress said. Today, for the deaths of my Huanhua Palace disciples, I absolutely must make you pay with your life. This Shen has never been good with poisons, and there are hundreds upon thousands of ways to kill your Huanhua Palace's disciples, Shen Jingzhou countered. Why would I choose the most cumbersome strategy? I did indeed escape from prison, but how can you prove I killed them? How can you prove you didn't kill them? A Huanhua Palace disciple shouted. If Shen Jingzhou didn't untangle this, he was afraid that in the future the two sects wouldn't ever be able to let the matters rest. He deliberated a little, then probed further. What does your esteemed sect's head disciple Gong Yi Zhao have to say about this matter? I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it. The little palace mistress's eyes went wide. The tears that had originally stopped started to fall once more. You still dare mention Gong Yi Shishong? She raised her whip and pointed it at Shen Jingzhou. You think that just because he's dead, you can't testify? You can't testify. You can use him however you wish. I don't like it. I don't like this. Shen Jingzhou felt like he'd been struck by lightning. He caught her whip mid-strike between two fingers. He hoped he'd heard wrong. What did you say? Gong Yi Zhao died? When did this happen? Who did it? Even in the original work, the worst part of Gong Yi Zhao's fate had been an assignment to Huanhua Palace's border territories, where he became a trivial character. Who did it? The little palace mistress asked savagely. You still have the face to ask who did it? Huanhua Palace's disciples surrounded Shen Jingzhou, robes rustling. Kill this despicable villain, the little palace mistress ordered. Take revenge for Gong Yi Shizhong, and for the Shishong and Shiji who were guarding the water prison. Satisfy their grudges. Shen Jingzhou's heart went cold. Could Lord Binka really have slaughtered every last one of the disciples guarding the water prison, including Gong Yi Zhao? And was the loss of those hundreds of lives being blamed on him instead? Stupid brat, you don't get it regardless of what we say, Ning Yingying said angrily. Didn't you see that my Shizun doesn't know? Without hesitation, Qing Jingping's disciples entered the fray as well. However, swords have no eyes, so lest Shen Qingzhou wanted to be stabbed, he had no time for careful thought. As this fight wouldn't end if they continued as they were, he leapt out of the tavern, lightly calling back, Come on out! As he hoped, both camps followed after him rather than go for each other, every disciple trying to squeeze out the door first. But as soon as Shen Jingzhou made it onto the main street, he was dumbfounded. A long row of cultivators dressed in various colors were waiting there, ready for battle, glaring like tigers, eyeing their prey. Fair enough. After all, they'd made such a large commotion in the tavern. It would have been pretty unscientific if they failed to draw the attention of the other people, right? With a light push of his foot, Shen Jingzhou's steps skimmed the roof tiles, and he landed on the eaves with a flip. He took a deep breath, then yelled from the pit of his stomach, Lu Chinga! Yes, go to your boyfriend! Yes! Yes! You don't understand. This is it. This is the moment. This is the fucking moment. Oh my god. I'm debating whether to stop here for now or just continue, because I might be able to continue. But if I don't stop here now, then I will have to absolutely continue. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11 more pages. But I can do that. Let's go. Someone flew up on their sword and angrily denounced him. Shenjingzhou, your heart is truly wicked. You purposely fled to the city, drawing people from various sects here. Was it so you could collude with demons and, in one fell swoop, reenact the tragedy? Wait, who is speaking? Who is speaking? I don't even know who's... Okay. Was it so you could collude with demons and, in one fell swoop, reenact the tragedy of the Immortal Alliance Conference? Whatever it takes, our Bai Chi sect won't let you succeed. Oh, this is a random fucking nobody, okay? So any and all accusations are perfectly acceptable, huh? Shen Qingqiu wasn't even in the mood to rant. Then, from the east came the hiss of a sword glare, followed by a person in white who arrived on a sword fast as lightning. Mind you, his descent was too forceful, pointlessly whipping up a powerful wind that threw the Ba Qi cultivators right off his own blade. Lu Qingge stood securely on Cheng Luan with his arms crossed. What is it? He's such a good boy. Too reliable, great Master Lu. Shen Qingqiu said with all sincerity. Get me out of here. Lu Qingge stared. My poison flared up again, and I can't summon the qi to fly my sword. If you don't take me, I'll just plummet from the skies. Lu Qingge let out a sigh. Get on. The crowd gathered to watch from below, berating them without rest, saying things like, Sangchong Mountain abets and shelters evil, and Baijian Peak and Qingjing Peak wallow together in filth. But they both pretended that they couldn't hear. Cheng Luan soared into the sky, the wind whistling in their ears, leaving the 10 or so cultivators who chased them on their swords far behind. Where to? Asked Lu Qingge. To the roof of the tallest building in the city, said Shen Qingqiu. After that, please help me hold off these people. What exactly is up with you? If you don't wish to be imprisoned, why didn't you say so earlier? You've made things so troublesome. Besides, even if Sangchong Mountain couldn't navigate the water prison, couldn't we just have destroyed it? There was no need to destroy the water prison. Get off. I'm only saying there was no need. I'm still grateful for your kindness, so surely there's no need to throw me down. Someone's coming. Shen Qingqiu didn't say another word and jumped off at once. The tip of his foot touched tile, and he stooped over the roof of the building. Cheng Luan's momentum was incredibly powerful. Lu Qingge and his sword did a dazzling somersault in midair, and only then did he manage to break, eyes fixed attentively elsewhere. Shen Qingqiu also followed his gaze. Then he heard a sneer behind him. What are you looking at? Shen Qingqiu nearly stumbled on the spot. That you just wait and see hadn't been just talk. Then again, since when had anything about Luo Bingke been just talk? He'd actually come to capture him, even braving the risk of Shinmo's recoil. How deep did his resentment run? Luo Bingke glared fixedly at them, expression dark, then slowly extended a hand to Shen Qingqiu. Come with me. Gong Yizhao is dead, said Shen Qingqiu. Luo Bingke went rigid. The disciples guarding the water prison are also dead, he continued. Luo Bingke, over 100 Huanhua Palace lives. Also, I'll be hated and persecuted. Was it really worth it? Red flashed in Luo Bingke's pupils. Whatever. You won't believe me, regardless of what I say, he said icily. Then, there's no need for more pointless chatter. I'll ask again. Will you come or not? He stubbornly refused to withdraw that hand. Shen Qingqiu had yet to answer when, out of nowhere, over 10 people appeared, hemming them in on the roof while riding their swords. The leader was again that man from Ba Chi's sect. This time he lowered his center of gravity, basically crouching on the horse stance upon his sword to prevent himself from being thrown off balance again. He shouted brashly, Shenjingzhou is ours, no one else should even think of. Lord Binka abruptly turned his head and yelled, Beat it! He hadn't even drawn his sword, but from his body a powerful blast of spiritual energy burst forth, and a shrill, whistling shriek filled the ears of everyone on the scene. Every last one of the pursuers, along with their swords, was shoved over to fall several meters away. Half of them even slammed into walls or pillars, coughing up fresh blood. The Ba Chi sect had met someone genuinely badass. Shut the fuck up, this stupid fucking... with overbearing chi. I hate her. And they had been wiped out to the last. The remaining spectators were all terrified. This black-clothed young man's cultivation was undeniably spectacular. How come so few of them had heard of him before? Lu Qingge pushed Shen Jingzhou. Go, do what you need to do. Can't you handle this by yourself? Shen Jingzhou asked. 5 to 2, 5 to 2. He hadn't forgotten these numbers. He'd only called Lu Qingge over to help him fight Small Fry and give him a lift along the way, not to meet a sudden, unfortunate end. But neither of these... Do you mind? Okay. But neither of these two characters were the sort to in any way listen to others. At the first wrong word, no, wait, without even a word, they started to fight. Chongluan was incredibly powerful, but Lord Binka didn't draw his sword. He concentrated spiritual energy in his hand and used his open palm like a blade to meet it head-on. Chen Jingzhou knew why Lord Binka couldn't draw his sword. In a duel between masters, one couldn't afford a single error, and this was the sort of moment when it was easiest for Shinmo to take advantage of an opening and invade its wielder's mind. If Lord Binka was possessed with demonic chi in plain view of everyone and his homicidal urges greatly increased, drawing the blade wouldn't be worth it. Lord Binka's body actually housed two sets of cultivation systems, one with spiritual chi, the other with demonic chi. Because his dual heritage had successfully integrated, these two systems didn't interfere with one another, each operating in excellent form. When necessary, his left and right hands could even use two different attack types simultaneously in a display of power. But right now, he couldn't draw his sword, and circumstances made it inconvenient for him to access his demonic chi. Thus, his killing power was diminished. For once, he and Lu Qingge were evenly matched. Deafening sounds shook the sky above the roof, white arcs and spiritual energy exploding together. Their duel was so fierce that none of the cultivators below them dared to rush in recklessly. Even the most inexperienced and undiscerning rookie could see that if one were to so much as graze either man's roiling, murderous chi, they'd ascend right to heaven without any further need to cultivate. Their fight was so fierce that Shen Qingzhou actually felt an answering urge. If not for Without a Cure having flared up at such an inopportune moment, he too would have wanted to enter the fray. But it was time. He squinted up at the sky, then leapt to the highest level of the building. On the highest roof, a gale screamed. It felt like it could blow him right off. Lord Binka saw this from afar and was seized by impatience. No longer in the mood to fight, the malevolence in his eyes skyrocketed, and he reached for the hilt of the longsword on his back. He's actually going so far as to draw his sword here? Lord Binka, don't be rash, Shen Jingzhou called in a rush. Too late, Lord Binka said harshly. With a flip of his wrist, Shinmo was drawn, wreathed in a dark, billowing chi visible to the naked eye. Chongluan stabbed straight toward Lord Binka. He gently flicked Shinmo's blade. He gently flicked Shinmo's blade edge which was as thin as a cicada's wing. From the center, what? Okay, period. From the center oozed wave after wave of something like a chill, and Chung Luan came to a complete, uncanny stop in midair. Never once had Chung Luan disobeyed Lu Chinga's orders, and he couldn't conceal his shock, but Shen Jingzhou knew that the situation was even more severe. If Luo Bingke really was hit with Shin Mo's recoil in this place, the lives of everyone on the scene, as well as in the entirety of Huayue City, and within a 50-kilometer radius, would be forfeit. As a last resort, Shen Jingzhou unsheathed Xu Ya. "Come here, Luo Bingke. Today we must come to a resolution." Luo Bingke raised his head and gave him a dark look. In the next moment, he had flashed forward to around a meter away. Then he raised his hand and drew a barrier that covered the entire roof, isolating them from everyone else. At last, he smiled, expression twisted. "Resolution? How could this be resolved? Shizun, at this point, do you really think what's between us can be settled cleanly?" "Why can't it?" Shen Jingzhou breathed in lightly. Though he was clutching his sword, he had no intention of fighting. In truth, wielding this blade, at this point, would have no effect. "As things are now, there's nothing I can say. Sure enough, even if we scheme until we're exhausted, we cannot outwit fate." Luo Bingke chuckled. "Fate? What is fate? That which let a 4-year-old child be humiliated while no one lent a hand to help. That which let an old innocent woman die of heartbreak and starvation." With each line he stepped forward, menacingly. "Or that which let me fight with dogs for scraps, or let the person I wholeheartedly adored lie to me, abandon me, betray me, and shove me down into the worst place, in a place worse than purgatory, with his own 2 hands. Shizun, look what I've become. Am I strong enough? Do you know how I spent those years within the endless abyss? For 3 years underground, at all times, at all moments, my mind thought only of Shizun. I wondered why Shizun would do this to me, why he refused to give me even a single chance to explain or plead my case. You want me to concede that this was the fate the heavens ordained for me? I thought for such a long time, and I finally understood." Within Luo Bingke's smile there lay a spine-chilling malice. "None of that is important. It's enough to just do as I want. Fate either never existed at all, or it's something I should have trampled beneath my feet." With the scorching sun overhead, the last wisps of cloud had disappeared without a trace. Sunlight flooded through the entire city, its brilliance dazzling like the entire land had been strewn with pure gold. Shen Jingzhou turned his gaze away from the sky. Because he'd been staring straight at the sun, unexpectedly, some tears glistened in his vision. Even though he'd had no other choice, he frankly was greatly responsible for Luo Bingke having reached this point. He had become a dark young man who thought only of revenge on society. Originally, Shen Jingzhou had wanted to stop Luo Bingke from going to such extremes, but everything he had done had not only failed to have a positive effect, it had actually etched Luo Bingke's hatred and resentment even deeper in his bones. Luo Bingke saw how Shen Jingzhou's expression had softened without warning and couldn't help but startle. However, in that same moment, an incredible pain assailed his head. He clenched his teeth, his hand clutching tightly around Shin Mo, which was trying to break free. No, he couldn't take the recoil here, at least not at this moment. To his shock, Shen Jingzhou said gently, "Don't let it overpower your mind." Upon hearing this voice, in his daze, Luo Bingke was transported to those years on Qingjing Peak. It became increasingly harder for him to control himself. There seemed to be a sharp knife churning within his brain, and Shin Mo's black flames suddenly surged. Oh, you raided? Thanks for the raid. Hi, welcome, raiders. I am too busy with the book. Hi, welcome in. You can shout it yourself. Hang on, I got this. Hang on, I got this. I got this. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Thanks for the raid. This is a very intense moment. This is a very intense moment of this book. We're reading Scum Villain, by the way. Okay. It became increasingly harder for him to control himself. There seemed to be a sharp knife churning within his brain, and Shinmo's black flames suddenly surged. The assault this time was ferocious. Lobinka was in unbearable agony. Why does that happen? Agony. When unexpectedly, someone tenderly embraced his shoulders. What followed was a blast of spiritual chi akin to the collapse of a 1,000-kilometer dike? D-I-K-E? I don't know what that means. Like a rainstorm after a long drought. It poured into Lobinka's body like a flood, extinguishing Jinmo's malevolence, with which he had reached a deadlock. Lobinka's breathing evened out, returning to normal, but his heart went cold. Self-detonation. Some in the crowd below were already yelling in shock. Shen Jingzhou self-detonated! Shen Jingzhou let go of Lobinka and slowly backed away, staggering once. Shuya fell first. Its master's spiritual energy was gone, and a sword exists with its master. The blade shattered into multiple pieces in midair. Shen Jingzhou had always been in the bad habit of swallowing his blood, but at this moment he could no longer choke it down. Having totally exhausted his spiritual energy, he was now lesser than even a common person, a mere ruined shell. His voice was light and fluttering, the wind blowing most of it away, yet Lobinka could hear him just as distinctly as before. What he said was, "For all that has passed, I repay you today. Think of it as me doing one good thing at the end." Then he toppled backward, off the building. At first, Lobinka only blankly watched. Everything playing out before his eyes was now many times slower. Even the moment in which Shen Jingzhou fell slowed until it was crystal clear. I have an illustration for us. I have an illustration for us. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, where is it? Yes, I do have it. Here it is. Here it is. He's saving his boy. That's his boy. I'll cry. Oh, I'll cry. I'll cry. I'll cry. I'll cry. Oh my god. Okay. The body dropping in midair was like a blood-stained paper kite. Only when Lobinka's body started moving by itself, scrambling to catch Shen Jingzhou before he hit the ground, did he finally discover that Shen Jingzhou's torso was light and insubstantial, his entire body empty, without a wisp of spiritual energy. He truly was akin to a paper kite, liable to be ripped with the slightest force. In fact, one wouldn't need force. It had already fallen apart. Lobinka was still in disbelief. Didn't Shizun hate his blood much more? Didn't Shizun hate his blood more than anything? Wasn't he unwilling to even be near him, to associate with him at all? So why, at the last moment, had he so gently helped to contain Lobinka's mind, as tender as he had been in all those years long past? Why hadn't he hesitated to help Lobinka suppress Shinmo's recoil to the point of destroying his own spiritual energy? Around him, all around him, people seemed to be muttering things like, "Execute the demon," and "Eliminate your own for the sake of justice." Lobinka's mind was in a muddle. He could only hold Chen Jingzhou and mumble, Shizun. The Qingjing Peak disciples had found the Huanhua Palace disciples the entire had fought the Huanhua Palace disciples the entire way and finally arrived. Ning Ying had by now heard that Luo was alive. She was both surprised by and happy at the sudden reunion. But then she saw Shen Jingzhou, his eyes peacefully closed. The words she'd been about to say took a turn, and she said in a trembling voice, "Allo, Shizun, what happened to him?" Luchinga walked forward, a smear of blood lingering by his lips. His expression was heavy as he said, "He's dead." The disciples were dumbstruck. "Who killed him?" Mingfan suddenly yelled. The crowd's gaze focused on Luo Binghe. Strictly speaking, Luo Binghe hadn't killed Shen Jingzhou, but Shen Jingzhou had indeed self-detonated and died before him. The disciples behind Mingfan drew their swords, about to attack, when Lu Qingge said, "You can't defeat him." Mingfan's eyes were bright red. "Lu Shishu! Then surely Lu Shishu can kill him to avenge Shizun, right?" "I can't defeat him either," Lu Qingge said lightly. Mingfan choked. Lu Qingge wiped away the blood by his mouth. Neither did he kill Shen Jingzhou. However, though he didn't kill Shen Jingzhou did indeed die because of him. Each of Lu Qingge's words were like a knife drawn from its sheath. Sangchong Mountain must avenge this grudge. Luo Binghe turned a deaf ear to it all. His mind was entirely a mess and totally at a loss. And he still held Shen Jingzhou's rapidly cooling body. It seemed like he wanted to call out to Shen Jingzhou to shake him awake, but also didn't dare to, as if he were afraid of being scolded. He murmured, "Shizun." "Stop calling him Shizun," Mingfan snapped. "Shizun can't bear such a burden. My brethren, let's fight together. So what if we can't defeat him? What more can he do than kill us?" Ning Ying spread her arms to stop him. Mingfan was furious and agitated. He thought that Ning Ying was still clinging to old affections. "Shimei, look what it's come to. How could you still not get it?" "You shut up," said Ning Ying. "What would Shizun think if you rushed to your death like this? If he heard, what would he say? Shizun would rather be infected than see us taken advantage of or bullied, yet you throw away your life so easily." All these years, Ning Ying had always had the charming attitude of a young maiden. At these abrupt, harsh words, Mingfan halted. After a long while, tears burst forth and flowed down his face. Sobbing, he wept miserably. "But it's so unfair to Shizun. Even though he absolutely didn't collude with demons, everyone kept saying he did. That he was a killer, a degenerate, and they threw him in the water prison. He didn't even get a chance to clear his name." He choked on his sobs. "Even though he obviously loved this brat so much. At the Immortal Alliance conference, he bet 5,000 spirit stones on him without hesitation. His hopes for him were that high. Whenever anyone praised him, Shizun would be so happy. And afterwards, he refused to return Zhengyang to Wanjiang Peak and insisted on keeping it so he could erect a sword mound on the back of the mountain. He was heartbroken for so long. And in the end, this is what he got." Sorry, a car was being loud outside. Luo Binghe listened in a trance, unsure if this was illusion or reality. "Is that so? At that time, Shizun too was utterly heartbroken?" Ning Ying Ying stepped toward Lo Binka. Her eyes were red, but her words and breathing were steady. Alo, we weren't there for the Jinlan City incident, but we all heard about it. I don't know why you didn't return to Sangchong Mountain despite being alive, and I don't know why you wouldn't stand up for Shizun, and I certainly don't know what had happened at the Immortal Alliance conference, but Shizun's kindness when he raised and nurtured you, and his feelings when he doted on and protected you, those weren't fake. Everyone knows. We saw it for ourselves. After a pause, she continued. If you feel that the Shizun in the old days didn't treat you well, then think back on the day you lost your jade pendant. Arshishong inexplicably backed off all at once. Yet, you yourself knew there was something strange, right? No one else on Qingjing Peak would turn leaves into weapons for the purpose of teaching a small lesson. Lo Binka involuntarily clutched Shen Qingzhou tighter. He whispered, I was wrong, Shizun. I really know I was wrong. I never wanted to kill you. My words end here, Ning Ying Ying declared. If Shizun really did you wrong in some way, and you can't understand and you can't under any circumstances forgive him, then at least today he finally repaid it all, right? So from now on, you... At this point, she couldn't take it anymore, and she turned her head away. I ask that you stop calling him Shizun. Repaid. That's right. Moments ago, Shizun had said something about repaying him. Had Shen Qingzhou been saying that in exchange for pushing Lo Binka into the endless abyss, he would also fall for his sake? Lo Binka started to panic. I don't want you to repay me. I just couldn't get over my anger. He was speaking to himself. Couldn't get over it. Whenever you saw me, you acted like you'd seen a ghost. Then you would happily smile and laugh with others, when in the past you only did that with me. And to me, you would say only the bare minimum to me, and you kept suspecting me of everything. But I was wrong. He stammered and stuttered, talking as he wiped the blood away from Shen Qingzhou's face. You disdained me for being a demon. So I was afraid that if I returned directly to Sangchong Mountain, you'd throw me out. I thought that if I took over Huanhua Palace and become like you, a leader of righteous cultivators, I could make you happy. Lo Binka's voice trembled. Shizun, I really... And that's the end of the chapter. It gets me every time. Oh, Binka. Oh, Binky. Oh my god. I love him. I love him and I love them. And it hurts more with the illustration. Oh my god. Whew. I'm fine. I'm fine. Oh god. Okay. That is where we are ending today. Let's put that down. I love this book so fucking much. This is only the second book. We have 2 more books. This is halfway through the second book. So obviously, you know, Shen Qingzhou is not really dead. I mean, maybe, but Shen Yuan is not really dead, you know. We still got more books, but like, boy oh boy, does Binka have to live with this for a while. Oh my god, that's a lot of books? Not really. We get through them fast. Also, the 4th book is like, is all just extras, which I love. I love that so much. I love the fourth book so much. um, but yeah, that's where we're ending today. I hope you enjoyed this reading. Stream on YouTube, I missed channel lore, perhaps? Perhaps. What? I'm actually very confused. What are you saying? I've been streaming on YouTube for a while now. The end of the stream for now, the end of this reading, the end of everything. Bingo's gonna end it all at this point. Oh my god. Yeah. I love it so much. I love this book so much. Oh my god. Everything. Hey, but we didn't even get to the sex yet. How can you be happy with that? We didn't even get to the sex yet. Alright. Thanks for reading. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being a good listener. I have a bit of news, I suppose. I will be I can make streaming schedules now, for one. I will have my stream schedule up later today, a bit after stream. I'll just get it up. I've already made it, but there was just one thing I was waiting on. So yeah, I'll be posting my streaming schedule on... You know what? Should I be posting? No, I'm gonna stick to Twitter. I'm gonna stick it to Twitter and Blue Sky. Okay, if you want, I won't be posting it on YouTube for reasons. But I'll be posting my streaming schedule later. I also have news about Yuwu, about Remnants of Filth, if anyone here is interested in those readings. I will be moving that to Wednesday instead of Friday, so it will be Yuwu Wednesday instead of Filthy Friday. It'll be a different kind of Filthy Friday, but you know when you know. Okay. But yeah, that's what's happening. I'm gonna go all in with streaming now. I can do what I want. I'm good. We're good. We're good. We got this. We got this. Thanks for hanging around. What else do I have news about? I moved. I'm in a new place now, so sound is very different. There's gonna be a lot of changes. You would go... Okay, sure. Also, I'm working on getting my Discord ready to being public. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be making a post about that soon, probably like tomorrow, maybe. Probably. I still got a couple of things to set up first. But yeah, that's gonna happen. Oh god. And I really have to pee now. I really have to go to the bathroom. So I'll be seeing you later. Thanks for watching. Let's see if I can raid someone. Now, I'm moving my thing to right in front of my face because don't worry about it. Let's see, who is streaming? Who is streaming? Okay. Not again. Okay, let's raid Fenry. Let's raid Fenry. They're playing Peak right now. Good for them. Good for people who don't get motion sick. Okay. Let's start. Oh, what the heck? Yes. Great. Let's start the raid. I need to hear sounds. So, let's do that. Say hi, be nice, be kind. Go say hi to Fenry. They're very nice. Alright, I'll see you later. Starting raid now. Okay. Thanks for watching and be safe and kind and pog. Okay, bye.